Yeah, good evening, dear ladies and gentlemen, and colleagues and friends online and in person here in Malaga. I think we are really in a fantastic building. La Térmica is a cultural heritage building, so it is a heritage building. It was built in 1904 as a house, Casa Misericordia, and this is what we need. We need more mercifulness in our times. It became only later a hospital during the war with Morocco to heal and to recover the poor people from their illnesses and their injuries. So this is a fantastic site where we can discuss what is the meaning of heritage in times of climate change and in times of more and more artificial intelligence intruding into our daily lives. These are the two topics that we have already today discussed, and also we need to see what kind of profound impact cultural heritage has on our daily lives, on the future of our society, and what is the role of climate change? How is climate change affecting cultural heritage? But also, heritage can give answers to the climate crisis and also for a better use of artificial intelligence. The European Union is really, in this field, the leader, the world leader, because Europe has always supported cultural heritage research, and more than 22 years it is researching what are the impacts of climate change on cultural heritage and what kind of answers heritage can give. And these achievements and the results were put together in the OMC report on strengthening cultural heritage resilience for climate change, which was published in 2022. So I have here my two colleagues. On my left side, there is Stella, and she is trained as an archaeologist. And I would like to ask you, what do you think, from your perspective, why we need cultural heritage, why we need to preserve it in times of climate change, but also in times of artificial intelligence, and what kind of role it can play so that we also in Europe will stay also competitive? Please.
Thank you, Johanna, and thank you for this very nice introduction to the topic. So first, I would like to say that this is a very timely topic, the issue of heritage, what heritage, and it's very well connected to the previous session we had discussing artistic research, but ending up talking about culture and cultural heritage, and all the associated questions of what is culture, how do we define culture, and just to say that as an archaeologist, when I talk about culture, the first thing that comes to my mind is monuments, pottery, metalwork, stones, architecture, these things. But of course, I know that this is not the definition that most people have. Culture is much broader, and it should be broader, and it encompasses tangible, intangible, and also it evolves. I think culture has an is evolving, and I think this is a good thing. Now, as for the role of culture, culture is who we are. And to me, this is the most important thing, not in a nationalistic perspective, but it's who we are. And it can be very personal for a person, but it can also be very broad, and I think by really understanding culture and by seeing also other cultures, makes people accepting and open and understanding. I think culture and cultural heritage has a very powerful role in Europe, in European competitiveness and in democracy. And this is why there are calls, for example, on how to use culture for peace building and conflict resolution. And I think this is something that should be discussed more. culture has a very, very important role that's not really explored yet. I think we see the opposite. We've seen how culture can be manipulated for misinformation, disinformation. Culture has been manipulated in war situations. The erasure of culture and cultural heritage has been used. We've seen this happening now in Palestine. So we have a duty to see how we can use culture in the opposite way. How can we use culture to promote peace? To promote peace-building efforts, for conflict resolution, for social cohesion. Culture is who we are, and we need this in order to be able to move forward and to build more resilient futures, basically.
And how do you see, I mean, cultural heritage is the creativity of the past. And what do you think can cultural heritage and dealing with the past inspire artists, creatives, and the whole cultural and creative sector? How can they benefit from studying or dealing with cultural heritage? Maybe you can develop this a little bit.
I mean, it's very, if someone just looks, it's very often that artists, creatives, practitioners, they get inspired from older examples, and I think this is a nice thing, the recreation, regeneration of art on the basis of previous examples. And this is not something that just, it's happening now. I mean, as an example, just to see that Romans were copying, Greek statues. This is something that's happened always. But
they have also further developed.
Exactly,
yeah?
But this is one way of development, and I think it's very interesting. I mean, what artists and creatives, what can they learn from culture, from older methods, older examples, also resilience. Everything from, and this is why the traditional crafts and their study are so important, and this is why there should be, and it's a problem we see, the disappearance of traditional crafts and how they should not get lost, but they should be preserved and sort of recreated or reevaluated.
Thank you. I'm working in this field of cultural heritage now for nearly 30 years, and I often hear, oh, cultural heritage is so boring, it is something from the past, there is no innovation in it, there is nothing is really sexy. And we see that also that more and more younger people, I had recently a discussion with young students from the law, and she said, why should we invest and give money to these old stones? So I would like to ask my colleague Sabrina, she is an economist, and she is also the mother of 2 young children. I wanted to ask you, what are you doing to make your children interested in cultural heritage? And also, what do you think as an economist, should we spend money to preserve these old stones? Maybe you can give us a little bit your views.
Yes, thank you, Johanna. Yeah, definitely. I think times changed as well. Children changed in our time. I mean, how I was a visitor of a museum, it's not in our time how children sees museums, cultural heritage sites, and I think we have different tools as well, because our children are so engaged with artificial intelligence and virtual realities and all this gaming stuff. I mean, they are playing all the time games and everything, and the funny thing is, in this gaming, there are always cultural heritage sites using. And this is also a channel for making cultural heritage more attractive. This could be a real channel, and this is also a challenge for artists and for the culture and creativity sectors to be there much more involved and see the potential, how this could be used for future generations. And so how, this is as well the museums. I have a very good example. I've seen a very interesting article. It was saying that a museum in Wiesbaden in Germany is overcrowded by Taylor Swift fans. Why? Taylor Swift in his music video, was presented as in the picture in the painting of Ophelia. She was lying there like Ophelia did in the painting. And all the Swifties they are coming now to this museum and they are offering a lot of sessions and getting deeper into the topic of culture. I think this is a very good example how we could catch them and bring them to the point that how important cultural heritage is. And if we need to use these channels, then yes, of course, we need to. We need to prevent this for our future generations.
I think this is a very valuable and a good way to start to better engage with the younger generation. But we also need to reach out to new recipients. Our countries are full of, we have now a lot of migration, we are having more problems with anti-democratic developments. And I think, what are your ideas so that we also become more inclusive? Because how can, for example, museums, and you as an archaeologist, you can tell the story that there were always a lot of people contributing to the cultural heritage from different backgrounds. So what would be your ideas how the cultural heritage sector could become more inclusive and not more considered as an elitist circle? No?
Yeah, I think it's our fault as cultural heritage practitioners that the cultural heritage sector has this perception of being elitist and out of reality, and who wants to learn about these rocks. And it's a sentiment that I also hear very often. And I think we as cultural heritage practitioners have a responsibility and a duty to study the way we study, pottery typologies and architecture. We also need to study how to make this history and the archaeology and the anthropology and the monuments relevant to today's society and accessible to people of all ages, but also to people of different backgrounds, and to also, like Johanna said, to migrants, to all people, basically. And I can give you the example of Cyprus, that it's where I am from, that yes, there is, we speak Greek, and there are many influences from, let's say, the classical Greek civilization, but that's not the whole story. In Cyprus, there is a distinct island civilization with influences, so many influences from both the East and the West, that even though it sounds cliche, it's so true. So it's so unfair to say that, this place, Cyprus, would not have place for migrants, or would not be accepting, since it's an island that always had people coming from elsewhere. So culture in and of itself is open and accepting and inclusive. I cannot imagine culture as not being inclusive, especially, and again, I'm talking about Cyprus. Everywhere you excavate, you find, imports, influences, imitations. And this is not just true about Cyprus, it's true about every archaeological site. In every museum you go, it would be difficult to find a museum that has, artifacts from only one space. Museums are inclusive by definition, by what they show, and they should be presented as such, and they should be open. Now, of course, as I said, if you make the presentations dry and boring, no one is going to want to see them, which is why we should, what Samprina was saying, we need to make museums and archaeological sites interesting and accessible, and we need to find a way, and this is why it's our responsibility to study this, to show their relevance to the present.
I think we are only at the beginning to better use artificial intelligence in the cultural heritage sector. And there are several ways. On the one side, we have a lot of data which can be processed through machine learning tools, through artificial intelligence tools. But on the other side, we also can open up and make cultural heritage more inclusive and more interesting when to tell new narratives. But we are really here at the very beginning. But before, all this data can be influenced or put into the AI models, into the machine learning tools. We need also to preserve the artifacts, so the tangible heritage. Without the objects, we are losing the access to a kind of truth. And this is another challenge, and I would like to ask my colleague Sabrina. She is working at the Fraunhofer Institute for Silicate Research with a history of 35 years of developing materials to protect cultural heritage, especially in times of climate change, where we see with the increasing temperatures, we will see more damage, we will see more corrosion, not only of cultural heritage materials, but also of all kinds of materials, whether it's highways, whether it's the track of trains, whether it's airplanes. Maybe, Sabrina, you can tell a little bit about the difficulty of material development, especially adapted to cultural heritage, from the story, from our history of stained glass windows. And maybe you explain a little bit that it's not enough only digitizing everything, but also to keep the objects itself in a good condition to be digitized and then used for AI models.
Mm-hmm. I just want to add to the former question. I didn't complete it, sorry for that. So as an economist, you ask me which revenue do these heritage sites have? I mean, if we compare this to our former king in Bavaria, which created a lot of nice castles, and he was really hated by the population. The population hated him, and in history said he died not natural death. I mean, yeah, but this is the time. Now they are really getting it's enormous money, which is the revenue now coming out of these castles, coming out of Neuschwanstein, all these beautiful castles, which are now we are so proud of in Germany. And in former times where, okay, he's just losing money for his ideas. He was a visionary, of course he was. But now we are getting the refund of that. And I would hope that more heritage sites or the politicians would see what they can get preserving all the cultural heritage sites and getting back in revenue, because everybody is talking, a politician talking about money. What do they get back? Of course, it's on one hand, you see the financial opportunities, what you can get back, but as well, what we need to save for our future generations. This is something very, very important. So this is the point with The Economist, and we spent some days in Venice during this year with my family, going through the streets and shipping and see, and my little daughter said, "Wow, Mommy, it's like a museum. I'm going in each street is something new and special." And said, "Yes, exactly. That's what it is." I mean, and now in Venice they have this special fee where you can in the high seasons they introduce this special fee that tourists pay an entrance fee, like going into a museum. It's like €5 if you are not staying overnight in Venice, if you're just traveling through Venice and go out and not leaving money in the city center. And people are really willing to pay this fee. They said it's good that I pay something, because it's like a museum. I pay an entrance going into a museum, and it's exactly the same. The willingness is there, and people are willing to pay. We just need to make the awareness that Venice or all these other cultural heritage sites, how the importance is. So, and the question you ask me now, it's very difficult we have a very long history in our institute creating materials for conservation, stained glass for stained glass windows, emiles, all the, yeah. And the point is that such kind of a development is so cost intensive. And if I ask conservators who are willing to buy a little glass of our material and telling me, this is too much, I can't afford that. And that's horrible for us to see. I mean, we really need this research, we really need to do something, but there's no money. Museums or other cultural heritage sites, they are so cutted in these times. And the conservators, they had a very interesting conversation 2 days before. And he said, okay, look, we really would like to go further with these materials to make tests and seeing how good it is, but we have no money. We can't do that. And I see that all my objects are going to destroying, and I have I'm not able to save them. And this is horrible. And for cultural heritage, it's always in these times, there is so less money. And all the people who I met working in this area, they are so passionate with this. And they're doing a lot, really a lot, each of them, without getting money. And that's so interesting that these things are just growing or go further because of this passion. And that's, I think, a really disappointing topic.
Yeah, money is always a big topic, and for this reason it is very important that these topics are embedded in policy developments. So if a topic like cultural heritage and climate change impacts are not embedded in the wider European policy, then it is very difficult to get money in the next framework program. And the same is, of course, for all the topics dealing with culture and creativity. It is really important that these topics are embedded in the mainstream policies. And for cultural heritage, we were quite successful. You have just seen the OMC report, which was published in 2022. And this was the motivation for the European Commission, because we gave 10 recommendations in this report for the EU and for the member states. And it was the motivation for the European Commission, DG Research, to set up the European Partnership Resilient Cultural Heritage. It was just closed, the call, where they have been looking for the consortium who will run this program, and it will become effective next year, probably after the evaluation. And so far they could find 28 countries who are have joined the proposal. Even Egypt has joined the partnership, and it will run for the next 10 years. And that shows that on the European level, it is really, we can be very proud about Europe, that it is possible to change policy if you are constantly bringing this topic into the public discussion. And it's not done with only one event. And I think the Pacesetters project is really a good starting point to put more focus also on the culture and creative industries and people, how we can better influence, how we can make the transition to the for the climate change which is necessary, how we can better shape the regulation and the framework for using artificial intelligence. And this is, I would like to encourage all of you to always interfere and invite the policymakers on the regional, on the national, and on the European level. If they are not informed by us from first hand, how will they then be able to design the right policy? And this is not something done overnight. It is a long-term commitment. But we can be really sure that there will be people who will hear us, who will take this into consideration. And I think, Florian, you mentioned it, that with this policy paper you have just designed, you will enter the political discussion. And on Friday, we will see with Teresa Ribera, the Vice President of the European Commission, that they are listening to us. And if we look to other parts of the world, they don't have a program like this one. They are really jealous. And I think we have a jewel in our hand. It is about us, whether we make a diamond or a brilliant out of it, or whether it will just fall apart. So I'm really very positive. And we must be ourselves, tell the good stories, tell the inspiring stories all the time. And okay, I think we still have, yes, some more minutes. We have just discussed that we see a lot of over-tourism and mass tourism then in the museum when these celebrities do their shootings in a museum, or it was also recently in the Louvre. But we have a problem in the rural areas. Yeah. How can we promote also the rural areas? Go ahead. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, I have an idea.
Okay, please, Florian.
Don't finish, please.
No, I just wanted how we can bring also the rural areas, and they have a lot of cultural heritage, but they are often, it is completely neglected. It is not appreciated, not even by the local people. This is different maybe in some countries, like in the United Kingdom, they have the National Trust, but in other countries, if you go to the rural areas, ask, what is your cultural heritage? They have no idea. And this is something where we really have to put a lot of effort, and I hope with the help of the AI that we can tell new stories, that we can integrate the people who are living in the rural areas. I come myself from a village of 300 inhabitants, and it is really important that we are inspired with the new tools. Everyone has now a mobile phone, and they are looking all the influences, and this is a tool which is not yet fully used. So please, Florian, sorry.
No, I think this is all this is super, super important, and I would I have so many things that I would respond. No? But I think, I mean, we should postpone the question of the specific role of the rural to the next slot, because then we really talk about rural innovation. But I think what is really important in this context is, sure, you introduced a lot. I mean, this kind of, I mean, I call it A heritage.
A heritage.
No, as opposed to the B heritage. No, I mean, there's this kind of heritage like Venice or the Louvre, or I mean, that is clearly, that is so over-commodified, yes. No? To a degree that sure, you don't have to enter big discussions why this should be preserved and why money needs to be invested and so on and so forth. I think that I would like to raise another aspect that I think is fundamental in this context. There is no such thing as heritage as such. No, it's not an heritage is something that we produce by considering or understanding something as heritage. So it's an active act of production by the contemporary generation that looks at what is left, or what survived, or what sustained, sometimes over many, many centuries, from earlier generations. And this is not only very, very interesting in order to generate new things, clearly, no, because it's always remixing and revisiting and reenacting. Yeah? I think it's also very, very interesting in a sense that it's an active act of creation. No, it's similar. Like, I mean, Whitehead is using this example of Cleopatra's needle. No, every day he passes by and he thinks that it's just the same. No, if you're a scientist, you know that every day it's different because all the atoms and all the molecules are constantly rotating and moving, and they're in different. It looks the same for us because we want to have it looking the same. Yeah. Yeah. But this has nothing to do with the actual. How can we? And this, I think, this is what is actually really at stake in the age of AI, which is reducing heritage to an object. No, while we understand that the power of heritage is exactly not to objectify it. Yeah. Yeah. How can we develop new relationships between creativity on one hand and heritage on the other hand? I mean, so far this is kind of it's almost. I mean, you said it's separated. Sometimes it's even a contradiction, yes. And so on and so forth. Yeah. So all this, I think, AI. I mean, this is why I somehow see this as an opportunity. Yeah. Not because we can digitize so much and we can tell so many stories and make everything virtual and da da da. I think AI is ultimately totally. We might underestimate this yet, or we might not be able to fully grasp what is at stake. AI is completely redefining the relationship between creating something new and reappreciating what is already there and what is the old. No? And I think there's no better example that I know, no more beautiful example than the town of Genalguacil with its 3,000 years history. Yeah. If they would not have started to use contemporary art and develop a history of 30 years to reenact this town as a heritage site. Yeah. So I mean, for me, in that sense, this is the innovative potential. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is, I mean, in terms of competitiveness, I mean, I fully agree with you, and I think we have to really spend a lot more work on this. This is our competitive edge. No? I mean, it's not because Europe has Venice and Hermes bags and blah, blah, blah. The competitive edge is the diversity of the cultural heritage. But we have to produce it. We have to generate it every day again. And this is what sets us apart. And this is our main competitive advantage compared to technology-driven innovation. Technology has no heritage. It has no history, because it has no history. The only thing that matters and that counts is the technology that is currently employed or used and cutting edge. No? Everything, we don't care about technologies of the past. I mean, maybe I know that there are some computer museums now that are exhibiting computers from the 1960s. But I mean, you look at it in order to say, oh, how ridiculous is this? Yeah. So, I mean, yeah. But I mean,
it should be seen as a base, and then coming out of this something new, something.
I had recently a discussion with the library in the University of Galway, and they said they're totally overwhelmed because now all the other colleges and faculties are approaching them because they also want to collect and preserve artifacts. No? And they said, no, we're only archiving paper because we are the library. And I said, okay, we need a collection. Yeah? And this collection should not only be this relatively. This is live streamed. Okay, no. These paintings on the wall. Yeah, the collection should enclose and include all sorts of artifacts, no matter whether they are considered technology or whether they are considered art or cultural artifacts. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I think this is what is at stake, and this gives us. I think this is leverage. No. That we can communicate to policymakers.
I think we have not yet discussed that cultural heritage is not only positive. I mean, there is still one aspect. This is the toxic heritage or the not so contested detested heritage. And I think it is really important that we are also dealing with this, that we are conserving, preserving all the sources to really research this kind of cultural heritage, this toxic heritage. And I would like to ask you, Stella, how can this discussion and researching about this negative, I call it negative heritage, contribute to democracy, to upholding our European values? And we see a lot of movements all over the world that this kind of heritage is rewritten, the history is rewritten, told in another way, which is not based on scientific evidence, on scientific findings, and how we can achieve this. Because you are an archaeologist, so...
Yep. Before I get to that, can I add something to what Florian said about how the role of technology and AI? And I think building on this, this is what you've said. It's exactly why it's critical to integrate artists and culture, creatives and cultural heritage practitioners in the creation of new technologies, in the creation and definition of AI. And in developing new technologies. Otherwise, technology, we need to have them in so that we can have tech for good, tech for social good. For example, like the STARTS ecosystem is an example where this happens, but it's not enough. We need more, and I think this is why we need this. And then, turning on what you said, I just start by an example. We all know, classical Athens, 5th century, the pinnacle of democracy. Was it really democracy? I mean, who was participating in that democracy? White adult men. Women were at home, slaves were building the Parthenon. And I mean, 40 years ago, even 15 years ago, and even 5 years ago, what you read in books is this, democracy. It's all about democracy, free speech, and everything. But thankfully, the narrative is changing now, and this is only an example. The last 5 to 10 years, there has been a turn in academia and in research, also sort of spearheaded by, Black Lives Matters and all these things, about finding in archaeology, in culture, in history, the hidden voices, the voices of the slaves, of the migrants, of the women, of vulnerable groups, of people that do not conform to what was accepted or ideal in ancient civilizations. And there are now classes that are taught in universities about slavery in antiquity, slavery in ancient Athens, in 5th century Athens, like 15 years ago, this was unheard of. There are classes now about racism in antiquity, which we know existed. Just because we didn't talk about it and we didn't write about it, it doesn't mean it didn't exist. And it's so also in the US. Again, we talk about democracy, but like, until when was there slavery? Very recent, unfortunately. And the narratives are changing, and again, it's our responsibility as cultural heritage practitioners to learn about this, to teach them, to talk about them, to accept and to understand that we made mistakes. And we can learn from those mistakes. By hiding these parts of history under the cover and pretending they didn't exist, we're not doing good to anybody, neither to ourselves, neither to we have to accept the way it was. So I think it's fantastic that there is this change now. And a simple Google search will show that there is a lot more articles now written on slavery, racism in antiquity. And I think it's good. And just by turning a blind eye and pretending it didn't exist. And I think we need to learn to be critical when we read about this ideal old world of democracy and free speech, to really, something we should also do today, democracy for whom? Was it really just who was allowed to participate in this so-called democracy? Yeah.
Yes, I would like to add something to Florian. We were talking about artificial intelligence and how to create virtual worlds and how this could be an opportunity. But still, there is still a danger, and we need to be very aware of what we are giving younger people, for example, what they create or how virtual they are, what is real. We had this discussion, Johanna, I remember, that reality, we really need to focus, that to tell them this is reality and that's non-reality. To think instead of combining and creating new realities. This is what you said, and as well, Stella. This is a very danger, and we need really to be aware of that and how we can protect it as well. That we can tell. This is what you said. I remember, Johanna, you were talking about a label, something that is certificate, which says a trusted label, which said this is the real reality. And that's not. Maybe we need to think about that as well.
Yeah. Are there any questions from the audience? What are your experiences? What do you think? What heritage we have, and how should we treat, and how can we better work together also with the culture and creative sector? I think, as you said, we are really still very separated. And we are only now, thanks to these European programs, also to Pacesetters, and also to the EIT Culture and Creativity program, it is the first time that we are coming together as the two separate sectors. And I think we have a lot to learn from each other, and we can inspire each other much, much more than this was the case in the past. And we are only at the very beginning, and I really do hope that the European Union is continuing this way. And once we have achieved this, we also need to reach out to the sectors which are not coming to our conferences, which are not... Even the president of the European Commission, in all her speeches, I never heard her speaking about cultural heritage, about what makes Europe so unique. It is, when you look to the Draghi report, the culture and creative sector and cultural heritage sector were not mentioned, and this is where we are really leading. And I was very much disappointed to read the Draghi report, because Mr. Draghi is from Italy, and normally Italy is always upholding the cultural heritage, the culture sector, and so I still think we have a lot of work ahead of us. So please, are there any comments? Please, I know it's already late, but please, yeah, great. Please say your name and where you come from.
I'm Alessandro, and I come from New Practice in Art and Technology from Berlin. There we also deal a lot with the technologies themselves. So I would be interested in, when you talk about AI, I think you're probably talking about chatbots. And I like to use the word chatbots actually a lot because it devalues a little bit the intelligence of them. And it describes more them in a way that they kind of have a bias, or let's say they created a world for themselves on the material that they were trained on. So I would be kind of interested in how you see the cultural heritage preserved in these models, as they have like kind of this bias that drives maybe people towards a certain narrative. Or when we talked earlier about tourism, for example, if I would ask a chatbot where to go, I would be likely to go to the Louvre. But I think there's a...
Anglo-Saxon, not French data.
I mean, there's a bias in the data, obviously, and something interesting we could explore. And there might be even the chance that when we say to rural areas, so if there would be a way to actually include them, or like how would we approach these chatbots and these training data sets to encourage people to explore these regions. Because I think it's, when we talk about tourism, there might be just the problem of accessibility, because there are a lot of nice places to go, but it's hard to find them. Also, if we talk about chatbots, it's like the same with Google. The searches are ranked and biased, as you also said, with which where do you search, which country, which ID, and I would be interested in what do you, how do you, it's more like a comment now, but how do you see these chatbots and cultural heritages and biases in them?
It's a problem of text and data, but we have now recently the European Union has installed the AI factories, and I looked through the programs of the AI factories, and there was only one AI factory located in Greece. They had one topic from culture, that was to put the Greek language into the AI. Yeah? But all the other 7 which were selected AI factories in Europe, none of them had anything to do with culture, creativity, or cultural heritage. And that shows that we still have a very long way to go to be really implemented and introduced and participating in these mainstream big initiatives. And if we are not there in the AI factories, there will be then the second round of AI factories. How can we then ensure what you just said, Marta, that the data and the text and the pictures and the images from cultural heritage and from the culture sector are in the models, integrated in the models? Marta. Florian, can you? Maybe yours.
Thank you, Joanna, because we had a big discussion during our presidency on text and data mining of our heritage and our culture. And the problem is of opt-in and opt-out. Yes, because no one would like to pay for European heritage to use it, and it's mainly stolen from online. So there is no control, there is no quality control, and the big tech are doing what they want, and nobody really asks for any indemnization and works on the bias. Now the initiative of the trustworthy AI is working on it, but it's a long way how it will be introduced fully, and this is a global problem that the chatbots, LLMs, or however we call it, they are fed with Anglo-Saxon text. Yeah, because Europe has quite abstaining approach to give all we have to the developers of AI coming from US, mainly from US. So this is the problem, how we develop our own LLMs to feed them with European languages and European heritage. Because and how to balance between the development of AI and the remuneration of the artists, creatives, heritage institution, which can be deprived of part of the incomes because of the use of AI. And this is a discussion, and code of practice for AI is rather for promotion of startups and AI developers, but European one, and as you said, AI factories. But even AI factories are not really sure what they want to do. We have 2 AI factories in Poland, one in Poznań on the supercomputing center, and second in Krakow in Cyfronet. And the current discussion are what we really need from AI and what kind of AI we want. And nobody knows. And people are really afraid to decide what kind of AI we want to have. Yeah. This is the main problem, that there is lacking of leadership in the large scale.
Can I don't think it's a technological problem. I think all this can be addressed and solved in fairly, I mean, it would not even cost a lot of money or code. No, I think ultimately it's an ideological problem, because the way, I mean, I just realized from what Stella said, no, probably we have to be aware, and therefore it would be interesting to discuss this with people who are not fully embedded in the European context. Yeah. So what does cultural heritage mean in Morocco or in Indonesia and in Latin America? I mean, where it is indeed not only contested or critical, or but I mean, it plays a completely different role. Not necessarily a smaller role, or not because they don't really get it or understand it or can't value it or whatever. I think the elephant in the room is classicism. Yeah. So this is the ideology that is still formatting the way how we talk about cultural heritage. And this is the reason why, for example, there is this kind of contradiction between contemporary artistic practice or creative practices and the heritage. No? I think it's very interesting to discuss this with colleagues from the field of music, because they have a deep understanding of what is at stake here. But I mean, this is an ideological formation, no, that has been developed. I mean, that results out of Romanticism, yeah, which is the parallel debate about instrumentality. Yeah, but it was resolved in a kind of ideological frame that constitutes an exploitative, extractive relationship to the past that reappropriates it. I mean, we have to, and without this, you don't understand the discussions about Nofretete and or Beutekunst and so on and so forth. Yeah? So I think before we solve the classicism problem, we can't really address AI, because the nightmare is, and this is what we see with the renovation of the west wing of the White House. No? This is the kind of infinite problem of neoclassicist kitsch. Yeah? And we also see this kitsch problem then, of course. I mean, okay, we don't have to talk about Neuschwanstein, but I mean, in the games, no, in the backgrounds of the games, in this kind of, I mean, sure, in a certain way, this is cultural heritage, but it's also it's a very, maybe biased is the wrong word, no? I mean, it's a very distorted and extractive and appropriative form of dealing with what we consider the past, and which probably has never ever been like this or happened like this. No, of course it's a construction, but it's there, and we have to figure out how we deal with it. Yeah? To think that this could be unbiased, no? I mean, there's no human being that is unbiased. Why should AI be unbiased? I mean, how can it happen? No?
Sorry, can I add, Florian, to what you said, that it's, I mean, as an archaeologist, and I think it's same for historian, anthropologists, cultural heritage practitioners, it's extremely difficult, if not impossible, to remove our own personal and social, political, economic biases when we study the past. But also, a huge part of what we learn, or what we know, what we understand of the past is a contrast, it's a construct of, again, rich white men that went and discovered antiquities and wrote about them. And if someone reads about who were these first, let's say, archaeologists or explorers, they were highly privileged men that did not need to work, but were able to just travel around and collect antiquities. So our understanding on the past is still based on that, which is why it's so important that the narrative is changing. So yes, there is a problem of elitism and classicism that we need to solve first.
But with the AI, which is just at the beginning, it is our sector, we ourselves, we must be the ones who put in the data, who put in the images and so on. We must be using it much more, and we must fight that some of the money is given to this. So otherwise it will be the big tech companies, and they are doing it already now in Europe, because many museums digitize all their collections with the help of American tech companies, and so they are giving for free all their data, and we have to be really very cautious that we are not doing exactly the same mistake now when training the AI, and because we have the data here, we have the cultural heritage data, and we are still #1 in the UNESCO World Heritage List. So this is our jewel, what we have in our hands, and this is. And I don't see a lot in the sector, I have to say, from the museums. I do not see a lot of movement there. It's very, very slow, and they are still sleeping a little bit and designing the next exhibition. But we are really in a completely new situation, geopolitical situation, where we cannot go on what we have been doing over the past 30 years. This is a completely new age we are already entering. Who wants to say? Marta.
Yes, this is the question, what museum mission is to protect and archive or to disseminate, yes?
Both.
Both, but if you talk to the museum, the first mission is to protect.
I know, it should not be, it should change.
Sorry to interrupt, but there is a very interesting aspect in this question, because film museums were invented at a point where film was not established as an art form that would ever be considered as heritage, no? Never. So the first film museums were introduced in the early 1960s, and there was a big ideological discussion. How do we actually preserve a movie? By not showing it and putting it into the fridge so that it stays there as long as possible, or by showing it as much as possible until the copy falls apart. This was a big ideological discussion between two camps, no? I mean, and I think there's a lot to learn from this, and it's very, very interesting to revisit these arguments, no? And I mean, I grew up in a city with a very renowned film museum, and they were part of this dissemination flavor. No? So I got a really good education in film, because they constantly showed the entire film history, and things that were absolutely inaccessible if I would have been growing up in another city, no? Suddenly were available. And I think we should not forget this, no? Because these questions, we thought because of the internet and free access for all and so on and so forth, all these questions are over. I think with AI, these questions come back in a very, very interesting and challenging way.
Yeah. We are nearly at the end. One aspect we have not at all touched, but I just want to mention it quickly, is we will see a lot of loss of our heritage, whatever we call our heritage, whether it's due to climate change or whether it's to geopolitical crisis. And this is a philosophical question for us, because we will be a society of mourning. And how do we treat this? Yeah, I mean, here we can also look to AI. How can we ease, or I mean, we will all be mourning when our heritage is lost, because the sea is rising, sea level is rising, and this is something what we have not yet done. It will be a collective mourning, and how we deal with this enormous loss we will see in the future.
Yes, we have already such examples as a Museum of Stolen Art. This is virtual, in virtual world Museum of Ukraine, which is built of digitized cultural heritage destroyed and stolen by Russians. So this is already the example we can go through, and it's really. It's something new, but it allows to experience, to meet, to discuss, and the virtual world, it can be some solution for this kind of transition, because we need to just accept the loss. It's part of our life, so there is no big choice we have. It's just accumulation of the resources we would like to dedicate for survive of the most precious things we would like to save. Yes. So we will not save every cultural heritage, so we need to accept and to work with the society and local communities for the heritage, which is the most valuable for them. Digitize, make other forms, and make survive in the virtual world, perhaps.
Yeah. That is something where we can join forces, the heritage sector, the creative sector, the AI, and we need to sit together what we want to preserve, whether virtually or reconstruction. So I think we have a lot of tasks ahead. It will be only the beginning
And there is no sense to spend the resources on the heritage who has no meaning for the community.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the significance for the community and for future generation can be a kind of the factor how we decide on that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's time to close, and I would like to thank my colleague Sabrina and my colleague Stella, and the ones who have been daring to ask questions or giving comments. Thank you, and enjoy the evening, and let's see in the next few days how we can join the forces and develop strategies to come together, to collaborate and make new and go on new adventures. Thank you.
Remember correctly, we have one more session between 7 and 8 on rural innovation. This will take place in the theater in 005. Yeah. Eat and then go back to the session if you want to. But we are not allowed to bring food inside. No, it's there. Exactly. So I think the idea was to have this a little bit back and forth, more informal. But there will be one more panel that will be recorded in 005 on rural innovation, directly connected to some of the points we raised here. And from now on, there is wine and tapas in the Galleria.
That's right.